Alpay Özalan was more than a defender. He was a force of nature. Fierce, fearless, and unyielding, he built a career on power, pride, and passion. The driving force of Turkey's golden generation, he stood like a wall against the world's best. He reached heights of international prestige, but he never played for personal glory. Every battle, every sacrifice was for his country. When he was the last line of defense and the game hung in the balance, Alpay was there. In those decisive moments, when everything depended on one challenge, one interception, one act of courage, he stood tall and delivered. Alpay could always be counted on. He played without hesitation, without fear. For him, pain was simply the price of loyalty. More often than not, when attackers dared to run at him, they found themselves stopped in their tracks. Here was prime Ryan Giggs, but standing in his path was Alpay. Prime Thierry Henry, fancying his chances. And yet, there was Alpay, unflinching, unbreakable, the wall no striker wanted to meet. Even the legendary Zidane, master of control, could feel the weight of Alpay. He did not know how to give up. Every challenge, every duel, every inch of the pitch demanded his fight. He was powerful, relentless, and never stopped at a single effort. Second and third battles were simply part of his nature. His determination knew no limits. He was a defender built on power, a man who relished the physical battle. Strong in the air, unyielding in the tackle, he embodied everything strikers hated to face. Every duel was a war, and Alpay rarely lost. He played with fire in his eyes, steel in his body. He attacked the ball, the player, and the entire game itself. His team felt it. Opponents felt it. Referees felt it. And the fans felt it. If he was on your team, they adored every tackle, every roar, every fearless act. If he was against you, they despised him with equal intensity. Strength, courage, leadership, and an iron will. He wasn't just the shield, he was the hammer. But he was more than just a destroyer. He was a driving force, pushing his team forward from the back. He joined attacks, broke through lines, and turned defense into opportunity. His presence was felt at both ends of the pitch. Alpay was everything you could ever want in a defender. Platini called him a great defender, without doubt. Ex-Liverpool legend and former Real Madrid coach John Toshak once said, "Alpay is a big, strong defender who has the attributes to be one of the best. But unfortunately for him, these flaws in his makeup have stopped him from reaching the very highest level." He could stop the best, dominate the fiercest, and yet, why isn't he discussed more among the all-time greats? The answer is simple. Alpay was crazy. Alpay's legend isn't just in his tackles or his leadership. It's in the fire he carried, the madness he embraced. And maybe that's why the world didn't fully understand him. He was too wild to be ordinary. Not even referees were safe from Alpay's fury. Unpredictable. A man who thrived in chaos, who intimidated teammates and enemies alike. The Times newspaper of the UK once wrote of Alpay, "Attack him on the pitch, and the response will be both swift and forceful." genius on the pitch, he was a master of the mind. A stare, a word. He would play games with your head. Provocation. And he did it all with a calm, unflinching confidence. Not reckless, intentional. He intimidated you if he could. He hurt you if he had to.
One or two fans have run onto the pitch, and I saw Alpay lashing out with his boot at one of them.
Alpay was not a player who knew limits. Even close friends suffered a broken nose. On the field, the only law was his own. And in that law, no one was safe. Alpay's name was first heard on the world stage at the European Championships in 1996. Towards the end of a crucial match between Turkey and Croatia, Goran Vlahovic surged towards goal with the score 0-0. An inexperienced Alpay, the last man in defense, chose not to bring him down. As a consequence, Turkey lost the opening game, but Alpay was given a fair play award for his sportsmanship, which is pretty ironic knowing what he would become later. But he gained invaluable experience in the tournament. Despite Turkey missing out of the 1998 World Cup, Alpay showed his class in the qualifiers against the Netherlands, a team that would go on to finish fourth in the tournament. Alpay played a crucial role in securing clean sheets, both home and away, securing 4 hard-fought points against the Dutch. He man-marked the legendary Dennis Bergkamp, neutralizing his threat and emerging victorious in nearly every duel. Alpay's intelligence, strength, and relentless focus proved he could stand toe-to-toe with the very best. As Turkey qualified for the European Championships in 2000, Alpay faced another one of Europe's most dangerous strikers, Oliver Bierhoff, in the qualifiers. He shadowed the German star with unrelenting focus and discipline, helping Turkey secure 4 points against the Germans and with yet another 2 clean sheets. At the tournament itself, the stage was shared with immortals. Fabio Cannavaro, Alessandro Nesta, Paolo Maldini, names carved into the very fabric of defending. And yet, on that day, Alpay stood among them, not as a shadow, not as a follower, but as their equal. Against Italy's finest, Alpay showed the world that he was not second to anyone, a defender worthy of standing shoulder to shoulder with the game's greatest. Even though fortune went against him in Italy's first goal, he never gave up. His tackles, his presence, his command of the backline outshined them all. The match was decided by a controversial penalty that left Turkey robbed. Still, Alpay fought to the very end. Turkey then faced Sweden, a game that offered little fire, but Alpay remained unshaken. Then came Belgium, the hosts. Under the pressure of a roaring home crowd, Alpay was immense. Every Belgian surge broke against him. Every duel was his to command. He rose above the noise, towering in defense, leading with fire and defiance. It was clear if Turkey were to advance, it would be on the shoulders of their warrior at the back. And Alpay delivered. Victory ensured Turkey advanced from the group stage. The quarterfinals brought Portugal. A clash with Fernando Couto was punished, the referee showing red. Without their leader at the back, Turkey's resistance faltered and were eliminated. During Euro 2000, Alpay caught the eye of John Gregory, the manager of Aston Villa. So impressed was he by the defender that he moved quickly to bring him to England. Alpay became the first Turkish player ever to feature in the English Premier League, a historic moment that marked the beginning of a new chapter in his career and the arrival of a true Turkish trailblazer in world football. In the Premier League, he would bring the same ferocity, discipline, and patriotism that had defined his rise on the international stage. He quickly became a fan favorite at Aston Villa. Next on the agenda was the 2002 World Cup. In the qualifiers against Macedonia, Alpay did the unthinkable. He scored a hat-trick. Not just any hat-trick, but a feat no other defender in international football history had ever achieved. Alpay helped secure a place at the tournament, but shortly after, in the beginning of December 2001, Alpay suffered a serious ankle injury. He was frustrated not just by the pain, but by the treatment he received. Aston Villa's medical staff and the club itself seemed indifferent. Alpay felt let down. He paid for his own medical expenses in Germany. The injury sidelined him for 6 long months, keeping him off the pitch and away from the team. But Alpay's resolve never wavered. He fought through the recovery, determined to return for his country. Just in time for the 2002 World Cup, he returned, playing less than 2 full games in preparation, showing the world he was made of tougher stuff and that nothing could keep him from representing Turkey on football's greatest stage. Despite being sent off in the opening game against Brazil in a controversial decision, Alpay returned stronger, determined to make his mark. With his strength, determination, and exceptional tackling, Alpay graced the tournament, forming the core of an obstinate Turkish defensive unit. Who could ever forget his duel with the legendary phenomenal Ronaldo? The world's most feared striker met Turkey's unyielding wall. Every challenge was a battle, and Alpay refused to yield. Turkey carved their name into history, finishing in 3rd place. And when they stood on the podium, the world knew Alpay had been instrumental. Alpay was not just selected in the team of the tournament, he was voted into the starting 11 too. When the Turkish international defender returned from the 2002 World Cup, wrote the Birmingham Post, his stock had risen to such an extent that he was been touted in some quarters as the best defender in Europe. Rumors did swirl across Europe. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Inter Milan, Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, all were reportedly interested in Alpay. At age 29, perhaps sensing this was his last chance to join football's biggest teams, and frustrated by the treatment he had received at Aston Villa during his injury, Alpay took a bold step. A week before 2002-2003 Premier League season began, he officially submitted a transfer request. Over the last 10 days, I have had meetings to stay at Aston Villa, and I am disappointed with the way they have gone. There is no point in me playing if I am not happy, because I won't be any good for the team, and it could affect other friends in the team. My unhappiness started because of the way I was treated after the injury last year. It has nothing to do with money, and Villa asked to pay my medical bills, but the impression I got is that Villa didn't care for me. This has broken my heart. Alpay was also questioning Aston Villa's ambition after stars like David Ginola, Paul Merson, and Peter Schmeichel departed. Alpay had fallen out with new manager Graham Taylor when whispers began to spread. The club leaked claims that he was demanding a 50% pay rise, a betrayal of trust, when the defender had agreed to keep negotiations private. To the public, he was painted as a mercenary, a money grabber chasing gold. To Alpay, it was a wound deeper than any tackle on the pitch, a lie that cut at his honor. Peter Schmeichel came to Alpay's defense. He said, what happened after the World Cup when he was frozen out by Graham Taylor was sad. There are a lot of politics at Villa, and the way Alpay was portrayed as a money grabber was nothing like the guy that I know. Taylor's just not keen on players with a bigger profile than himself. Schmeichel reminded the world that Alpay was no mercenary, but a warrior wronged. a defender of pride, betrayed by politics. Alpay accused Graham Taylor of playing games with his career. I have problems with Graham Taylor. He doesn't like me, and I don't like him. How can you be in the World Cup Dream Team and not play for your club? It's very different and very difficult. But he will see the real me against England next week. This is a very big chance for me to remind people that I am still around.
Alpay of Aston Villa, he's hardly played any club football this season, having fallen out of favour, of course, with Graham Taylor there, the manager, and he feels tonight he's got a point to prove. This evening, he says, Mr. Taylor will see the real Alpay. Presumably means that we saw at the World Cup finals when he was one of the outstanding defenders in the tournament.
Heading into the clash with England, Alpay carried the weight of impossible odds. In more than 2 years, he had played just 9 competitive games for club and country, and 5 international friendlies. For any defender, such absence would normally leave rust, hesitation, the sharpness lost to time. And yet, against one of the world's finest teams, Alpay was nothing short of magnificent. There was no rust, no hesitation, no fear, no weakness, only strength, precision, and defiance. He read the game as if he had never been away, commanding every duel, silencing England's brightest stars. To step into such a battle under those circumstances and not just survive, but thrive, that was extraordinary. That was Alpay, the warrior who fought battles no one else dared to fight.
Alpay's hardly played in the Premiership this season. Certainly hasn't appeared to be ring-rusty in any way. Hands after this one. The legs on Alpay. And his legs were taken from beneath him. That was a vigorous challenge, certainly from the Aston Villa defender.
Against England, Turkey faced an onslaught. A team packed with world-class names. A crowd baying with hostility, and wave after wave of white shirts crashing forward. It was a battle for survival. For most, it was too much. But not for Alpay. He stood almost alone, holding back the tide as if it were a battlefield at Gallipoli. Defiant, unyielding, refusing to let Turkey be swept away. Every clearance was a stand. Every tackle a resistance, every duel a message that one man's courage could still defy an army. England may have won the battle that night, but Alpay showed the spirit of a warrior who would never surrender. And despite his heroics, it did nothing to sway Aston Villa manager Graham Taylor. Alpay was left in the shadows, frozen out for the rest of the season. What more could he do? But the warrior was not finished. Alpay returned to the international stage at the Confederations Cup. Once again, Turkey defied the odds, rising to claim 3rd place. Along the way, they met Brazil yet again. This time, Turkey struck back and Alpay was there, part of the redemption. He was not at his absolute best. How could he be, after so many months of exile? After so much football lost. But even so, he remained a force. His presence, his leadership, his defiance still carried weight. Against the world's elite, he proved again that even when diminished, Alpay was still a warrior capable of shaping games. The following season, as Aston Villa lined up against Charlton Athletic at home, Alpay stepped onto the pitch only to be met not with cheers, but with jeers. His own fans turned their voices against him. The crowd booed every time I touched the ball. Only a man who has been booed by his own supporters can understand what it is like.
Alpay! What an outstanding volley!
Then I scored, and I did not want them to cheer me. I thought, I have scored. Now you must remain silent. Do not show double standards by cheering me. Then came the game that would define Alpay's career. October 2003. Turkey versus England. A night that would not be remembered for goals, but for chaos. From the very first whistle, England came with fire. As always, Alpay was a soldier ready for duty. Every cross, every surge, he was there. Towering in the air, ruthless in the challenge. A wall draped in red. But even warriors stumble. Midway through the first half, Alpay misjudged his footing. A slip, a stray pass, and suddenly Turkey's goal hung in the balance. It could have been disaster. But fate has a cruel sense of rhythm. Because Alpay would not be the only man to lose his footing that night. England were awarded a penalty, and Beckham misses. The crowd erupts in disbelief, but Alpay sees an opening. A defender's instinct, not only to stop, but to unsettle. Taunts, gestures, words sharper than any tackle. Alpay turns England's heartbreak into fury. Some players fear the storm. For Alpay, the storm was home. Where others lost their composure, he found clarity. In the noise, the pressure, the fury, that was where Alpay came alive.
There's a train coming, rolling down the track.
Alpay and Beckham had the little run-in at half-time where he chased him off the pitch and it went off in the tunnel.
Did it go off in the tunnel?
Oh, it went off in the tunnel.
Did
Well,
it?
yeah, it went off in the tunnel. Their security was splitting it all up and the whole team at the front having a go at them, and they were like face to face but security in the middle. And Alpay, remember Alpay? He was right at the front of them English. And then all of a sudden you just see this white fist come over the top of nowhere. Bang, clocks Alpay, knocks him to the ground. Wazza. Cleaned Alpay out, yeah, done him.
Amidst the chaos, despite a moment that saw Alpay briefly floored, the Turkish defender rose from the incident with remarkable composure. Against an England side boasting the likes of Steven Gerrard's relentless drive, Paul Scholes' intelligence, David Beckham's precision, and the explosive energy of Rooney himself, it was the Turkish centre-back who stood tallest. The second half belonged to him. Unshaken, he turned the confrontation into fuel, commanding the backline with authority. Every aerial duel, every sliding interception, every perfectly timed tackle reminded why he was regarded as Turkey's defensive rock.
Rooney being encouraged to get to his feet by Alpay, who's never shy about wanting to confront an Englishman.
As England pushed forward with wave after wave of attacks, it was all Alpay who stood tallest. Far from being rattled, the veteran displayed leadership and grit, lifting his teammates with his presence. Where many would have shrunk under the jeers and the fury, he rose not just to his feet, but above the game itself. Every duel felt like a battle won. With each intervention, Alpay grew larger than the moment, a towering sentinel who refused to yield.
Coming to take me home. There's a jet black Hearse driving down the road.
Then came the moment the stadium seemed to hold its breath. Darius Vassell, England's lightning bolt, the fastest man on the pitch, was racing into open space. Vassell surged forward, a blur of pace, but Alpay did not flinch. He timed his steps like a hunter circling prey, eyes fixed, body steady, every muscle coiled with defiance. Vassell tried to slip past, but Alpay met him with perfect force and precision. For England, it was a chance lost. For Turkey, it was a statement. Alpay would not be defeated. By the final whistle, Alpay had produced yet another masterclass. Alpay had been, without question, the best player on the pitch. The next morning, Alpay's name filled the front pages. To England, he wasn't just an opponent. He was the villain of football. The man who disrespected the captain, the badge, the nation. He became public enemy number one.
Believe me, I knew he would miss the penalty. I was right behind him. Because if you watch the penalty position again, I'm right behind him and I'm sure he would miss it.
I honestly can't believe that such a tiny incident has become such a big issue. It happens between two players, it happens between me and Beckham. How much they value Beckham there? I mean, with the slightest move, they hanged us here.
Alpay was receiving death threats. At Aston Villa, his contract was torn up, his reputation left to rot in the English press. Though the shine of Europe's spotlight had dimmed, his fire had not. In Asia, Alpay found a new battlefield. First, in South Korea with Incheon United, then to Japan with Urawa Red Diamonds. From the moment he stepped onto Japanese soil, his authority was undeniable. In his very first season, Alpay was voted the best defender of the season. But Alpay's fire carried a price. His temper, his intensity, the very edge that made him unbreakable, it also made him combustible. The following season, 3 red cards in just 7 matches shook the club's faith. And so, they terminated his contract for disciplinary reasons. But Alpay never stayed down for long. In 2005, he returned to Europe, signing with FC Cologne in Germany. There, he earned a recall to the Turkish national team after 2 long years in exile. Turkey needed his presence, his authority, his leadership, and once again, Alpay answered the call. With him back at the heart of defense, Turkey pushed through qualification for the 2006 World Cup, driven by the hope of recreating the magic of 2002. When Turkey lined up against Switzerland in the playoffs, the eyes of a nation fell on Alpay. As the anthem rang out, he sang with such passion, such unshakable patriotism, that every Turk watching felt his heartbeat as one with theirs. But fate can be cruel. Just moments into the game, Alpay conceded a penalty, a moment that stunned the nation. A warrior's heart betrayed by a single mistake. Yet true to his nature, he did not hide, he did not break. He fought on, throwing himself into every duel, every challenge, as if to atone for that early blow. Turkey surged back into the tie, playing with fury and fire, and though they won on the night, the aggregate score favored Switzerland. Elimination was bitter enough, but what followed turned the night into infamy. As the final whistle blew, chaos erupted in the tunnel. In the middle of it all stood Alpay. This was no ordinary brawl. This was the release of years of pain, the humiliation he had endured in the past, the blows he had been forced to swallow in silence, the bitterness of being cast aside, all of it boiled to the surface. He was fighting the ghosts of everything he had suffered. Nick Galuk, a journalist, testified that Alpay had attacked many Swiss players in the tunnel. Raphael Wicki, one of those players, also testified that Alpay had punched him in the forehead. Alpay was also rumored to be the one who kicked Stephanie Grifting so hard he suffered a ruptured testicle and had to be taken to hospital for emergency surgery, with potential life-threatening complications. Alpay was banned by FIFA for 6 international matches. Just a few weeks later, still fuming, he was involved in another incident, elbowing the Hamburg footballer, Guy Demel, an incident for which he received a 4-match suspension. Alpay was unable to save FC Cologne. The team fell, relegated, and with it, so too did Alpay's place in football's great theater. What is Alpay's legacy? Was he a hero, a villain, or simply a soldier who gave everything for his nation? Because Alpay's story isn't just football. It's pride, it's passion, Its courage lived without compromise. It is rare for a man to engineer his own downfall as successfully as Alpay Özalan did, wrote the Birmingham Post. Of all his gifts, and there are many, perhaps the one for which he will be most famous is self-destruction. Few have messed up as spectacularly as Alpay. When Alpay retired from football, many thought his battles were over. But the warrior never rests. He completed his military service, was compared to Hercules, and today stands as a shield of his nation's leader, guarding the president with the same fearless heart that once defended Turkey on the world stage, just as he was loved or hated on the pitch. Alpay is loved or hated still.